Here.
All right, thank you. We are all here. Mark, would you lead us in the pledge of allegiance, please? And the flag is right up
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pam, if you would read the mission statement, please. The Thompson School District. Be a school district that empowers, challenges, and inspires students, faculty, staff, parents, school leaders, and community members to learn, achieve, and excel. Thank you. First up on the agenda for tonight is adoption of the agenda, and I will entertain a motion and a second to do that.
So moved. Mark Sutter.
Thanks.
Second, Dawn.
Thank you. I have a motion from Mark Setter and a second from Don Hurt to adopt the agenda as presented. Are there any changes or corrections? Hearing none, Laura Lee, if you please call the roll.
Paul Banks.
Aye.
Stu Boyd.
Aye.
Pam Howard.
Aye.
Lori Vista Ward.
Aye.
Don Kirk.
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Mark Sutter.
Aye.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not.
I don't think she's
I'm
on.
not on here. Is it?
Lori's not on.
Can you guys not hear me? I don't know. Is there a button? Matt, you want to? Thank you. You guys didn't have to turn anything on.
No.
I feel like I'm not.
You're not on.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Okay.
Not as loud as the rest of us, I think.
Here we go.
That's Lori.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's.
Oh, got pulled out.
That would help. Oh, no, that's what, that's something else.
Be what's supposed to be.
Oh, that's a dead wire. we just said.
Okay, I see the problem. Try it now.
Test, test, test. I don't think so. You're gonna have to shut. I think that's.
Is he new to the trustee?
Nope. Yes? Yes? Okay, all right, thank you. Appreciate it, thank you up there. All right, so we have the agenda. Next is item 3.1, which is approval of minutes from October 7th, 2020. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So move.
Second?
Who was that?
Barb.
Barb and Stu, okay. So I had a motion from Barb and a second from Stu to approve the minutes. Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, Laura Lee, if you would please call the roll.
Paul Banks.
Aye.
Stu Boyd.
Aye.
Pam Howard.
Aye.
Lori Vista Ward.
Aye.
Don Kirk.
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Mark Sutter.
Aye.
All right, thank you. That takes us to the public participation portion of the meeting. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you, Berthoud High School, for having us here. We meet here twice a year, so this is our fall meeting. We come back in the spring. So it's good to see all your faces. I will turn it right over to Dr. Schaefer for his superintendent's report.
Yes, good evening, Madam President, members of the school board.
Very excited to be here in Berthoud. Immediately before this meeting, we had an opportunity to meet with a number of Berthoud trustees, as well as city manager and town of Berthoud mayor. So we were able to have dinner with them, which has been customary, as well as just talk with them about a number of mutually important issues between the school district and town. So it's always great to get together with them, and we had a great conversation. This week, we were excited to welcome back our 8th grade students, and so we now have our students early childhood through 8th grade back in session, so that feels really good. Our early child through 5th grade is here 5 days a week, and we are on a hybrid model for our middle school students in 6th, 7th, and 8th. And next week, we are excited to welcome back our high schoolers. So we will be welcoming back high school students, 9th through 12th grade. They too will be on a hybrid. Hybrid means that about 50% of the kids attend on Mondays and Thursdays. The other 50% attend on Tuesday and Friday, and then Wednesday, everyone is remote. This Monday, October 26th, we will commemorate Ferguson High School and the new Thompson Career Campus. We have a virtual ceremony which will kick off at 5 p.m. So we are very excited to officially commemorate and do a formal grand opening of this amazing facility. As you know, this is the old Van Buren Elementary, which is now the new Ferguson High School and Thompson Career Campus. We will have public tours available starting at 5:30, and we have a few slots available if individuals of our community are interested in touring that great facility. You can sign up online, and they'll be going off every 20 minutes or so, and obviously to promote social distancing, we'll be doing it in groups of about 15 every 20 minutes or so, and again, that'll be on Monday, the 26th of October. We are pleased and actually very excited to announce 2 students in our district that have been that have been named as semifinalists for the National Merit Scholarship. The National Merit Scholarship Corporation was established in 1955 to identify and honor scholastically talented American youth and to encourage them to develop their abilities to the fullest. Our first semifinalist is Autumn Zhao. Autumn has lived in Loveland for about 13 years and is a student at Thompson Valley High School. She is applying to college right now with the hope of majoring in either political science or international studies. She is also looking into pursuing a degree in both of those fields. Her dream is to be able to attend Georgetown University. Our second semifinalist is Elizabeth Ellen Sundheim. Ellen is a student here at Berthoud High School. She has lived in Loveland for 14 years. She plans to attend college and major in applied physics and then earn a doctorate and have a fulfilling career in scientific research. So I believe Ellen is in the audience this evening, and I'm not sure if Autumn is here, but if Autumn, if you're here, if you can stand so we can recognize you. We are really proud of you. That is a phenomenal accomplishment. And we know you're semifinalists, so we wish you luck in the process, but that's awesome, so good stuff. Finally, tonight we welcome students and staff from Loveland Classical School. We'll be showcasing some of the great things that are happening on their campus. So at this time, I'd like to invite forward our representatives from Loveland Classical, who will talk to the school board this evening.
Are they to use this microphone?
Yeah. Go up to the podium.
I think that one's live.
Just this one. Hello everybody, my name is Connor Love and I am a sophomore at Loveland Classical Schools. I have been attending Loveland Classical Schools since the 2nd grade. I'd like to start off tonight by saying that we all as a student body appreciate that LCS is opened in person at the start of the school year. We really appreciate our teachers' hard work to make a plan that enables us to learn in person, because it really helps us to learn in person, as we have all, I think, had our fair share of troubles adapting to an online setting. Which brings me to my next point. It has really been beneficial for our learning to be in person and interacting with our teachers and being able to ask some direct questions and not having to fight for a spot on a computer. I really think that we all, as students, appreciate that and recognize our teachers for putting in that effort. Thirdly, it has been safe. We have had no interruptions and for our in-person school in the first 7 weeks. Because of this, we have been able to keep this open, and practicing our safety protocols and being strict about those has really allowed us to keep with this in-person school. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Juliana Bierning, and I'm in 7th grade. One of the things we've been trying to do since this has happened and it's been difficult to be in person to stay safe is we've been trying to keep our community strong, even though we're restricted in some ways, so people can be safe and healthy. We have created different activities to do while still keeping the guidelines, while still following the guidelines of the health department. Our teachers have done an amazing job with following the regulations, which is nice because they're still teaching us very well, and it's really nice to have their support there and be able to see them in person and still have that relationship with them. One of the activities we've done is crab soccer. It's just like soccer, only you had to crab walk, and it was a bigger size ball, and it was something new for everyone and fun, so it made it nice for everyone to have because it was something new and no one had experience with it. Recently, we just started a fundraiser. Each cohort chose an organization to donate to and are now raising money. It's something that helps the community and can be fun for the students. The cohort that raises the most money gets a prize. Just this week, we also had each cohort decorate a sign to put up to show the firefighters our appreciation for them. Another thing we are going to have is Spirit Week. It's basically 2 to 3 weeks of dressing up. There will be days like Flannel Day, Match Your Cohort Day, when everyone in your cohort wears the same thing. Another one we are planning on doing is Formal Day. In the student government, everyone in the student government comes up with ideas and then votes on them. There are 2 people from each cohort to communicate the activities that are planned throughout the student government. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Rossier. I am a junior at Loveland Classical Schools, and I have been with this amazing school since the 5th grade. Over the many years, I have been an active member of student government, and today I am vice president with my longtime friend Ashley Prose. This year, our academy has been divided into cohorts, and we all go on different days. So this year, student government's main goal has been to connect everyone through the distance. LCS is a forever growing school, and we love to connect everyone through the distance. 2020 has made us break through and adopt new customs. Today, students and teachers are having their classes outside. Even student government meets outside. Through this, we all have the leisure of being maskless. Our seminars flow as smoothly as ever, even though there's more distance between us. Even the students that have chosen to stay online are always involved. The 9th grade year got to have a science day where they had solar ovens, and they showed each other how they could use the sun to cook an egg or a hot dog, something simple. And it was a great way for us all to be outside and enjoy each other's company while also learning science. The teachers' computers and new speakers are portable assets to our newfound way of life at LCS. All in all, I am incredibly grateful that my classmates and teachers have been able to return this year. It has been a treat to have seminars and those amazing classroom conversations again. Our new principal, Mrs. Miller, has made sure that our small school is ready to conquer COVID-19. She has made sure that this seemingly dismal year will be one where LCS not only survives, but thrives. And for that, I am grateful. Thank you guys so much for your time and having us.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for the kids before I let them go? All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your school year. And you're free to leave if you don't want to stick around for the rest of the meeting. All right. Thanks.
So, Madam President, I have 2 more quick things.
Yes, sir.
So, first, I want to acknowledge this week we are celebrating Classified Staff Appreciation Week, and I know a little bit later on in our agenda we will be passing the board will be asked to pass a proclamation. I want to take this opportunity, though, to thank our 800-plus strong classified staff here in the Thompson School District. These are our transportation drivers, our nutrition service workers, our grounds crew, our operations, school staff, staff that work as our school nurses. They are truly the backbone of our organization. A lot of the work they do is behind the scenes. A lot of things that are sometimes people don't realize or recognize, but the district would not function, quite honestly, without the tenacity and amazing work of our classified staff. And we value and appreciate them. And while we take a week to celebrate them, we should be celebrating them 52 weeks a year because of their value and the amount of just contributions they make. So we applaud and salute our classified staff. We appreciate all that they do for our students, our staff, our community. They are definitely valued members of the Thompson School District family. This month is also Principal Appreciation Month. So our principals also work tirelessly here in our buildings. This is a tough time to be an administrator, as you can imagine. Lots of opportunities for leadership, as you can imagine, during COVID, and from being the face of the school in many ways, to making sure that communication is strong, to maintaining the culture and climate of the buildings, to the scheduling, to all the logistics. Our principals are working super hard. And so we also take a moment, and actually several moments during this month, to appreciate the fine work of our principals as well during Principal Appreciation Month. So to these valued staff members, both our classified staff and principals, if we can maybe give them a round of applause, they certainly deserve it. And finally, we have Top of Thompson Awards. This is a recognition program that we started last year, where each month we recognize a classified staff member, a licensed staff member, and an APT, or an administrative staff member, here in the Thompson School District. And so these individuals are able to be nominated by peers or by other individuals, either in the community, school community, or community at large. And we have the nominator and the nominee usually come forward. And so tonight we are going to first start with classified. And so, Laura Lee, if you'll please call each group up.
Sure. Steve Lewis.
Hi, I'm Julie Winters. I'm the Nutrition Services Assistant Director, and I also supervise Steve. And Steve goes above and beyond in every way, especially since March, when COVID shut down in-person learning and we moved to emergency feeding. Steve has dealt with unprecedented stresses from an overcrowded warehouse, broken down equipment, delays in construction, and working with minimal to no staff during this time. He has always found a way to make it work and is exceptionally fiscally responsible with our inventory and a good steward of all of our resources. While managing the stress and tackling the ongoing tasks, Steve always keeps a positive attitude, and he's the first to offer up help if anyone needs assistance. I am so fortunate to get to work with Steve and have him by my side during this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations, Steve.
Chelsea Mattoon.
Hello, I'm Megan Maddox. Ooh, that's loud. I am a paraprofessional over at Walt Clark. Several of us nominated Chelsea, so I put together kind of a condensed version. Kind, good, and confident. These are the words our students chose to describe Chelsea Mattoon. Chelsea demonstrates good, calm, and effective leadership with her ESS team at Walt Clark Middle School. She is an exceptional educator who cares about the success of her students as well as all of the students at Walt Clark. Chelsea never loses her positive attitude or desire to collaborate and problem solve. Chelsea works so hard to give her students and team everything that they need to be successful. Chelsea is so dedicated to special education. She is a hero. It is impossible to imagine our school without her. We would be lost. So many of us at WCMS are so pleased to have Chelsea, or that Chelsea is receiving this honor. She epitomizes the tap of Thompson.
Congratulations, Chelsea.
And Jane Harmon.
So I will be presenting. Jane was nominated by Jen Schwab, but I will be reading Jen's words here. Jane Harmon's communication and leadership has been exceptional during these uncertain times. She has prioritized making sure her staff is a part of decision-making when possible, knows what is happening as soon as possible, and she keeps the focus on students being first in everything we do. During very uncertain circumstances this year, I have felt continuously respected and valued by Jane and her leadership team. I am thankful to be under her leadership right now.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Jane. All right, thank you, Dr. Schaefer, and congratulations to all the Top of Thompson winners. All right, next item we have is item 4.4, which is board committee reports. And I think I'll just start down here with Dawn and move down the row. So Dawn, if you have a report?
I do. I've actually been in 2 committee meetings this month. JIC, which is always fascinating, looking at the data and our numbers on our insurance and our benefits, and trying to make sure we make the best decisions for that. And it's a great group. And then the other group is the Special Education Advisory Council, and that is a group that its name speaks for itself, that is desperately in need of members and representation. And so I'm sharing the call to have people participate in the group. So if you are interested, please let me know, and I'd be happy to get you involved, because we would really want to make sure that we have people who are representing all different ages and groups and different needs in the group. So, and thank you to everyone on that team right now, because it is a fascinating conversation to be part of, to really dive into how we make sure we meet the needs of our special education students, or students who need special education supports. That's how I wanted to say that. On to you, Mark.
Okay, I also attended 2 committee meetings. First one was for technology. It's called the TALC committee. And as you can imagine, in the midst of a pandemic, we have a lot of technology challenges and hurdles that the team's been turning into opportunities and tackling those. And so, although there's a tremendous amount of work to be done, there's also been a tremendous amount of work completed. And so it's nice to stay abreast of everything that's happening with our technology. We're in good hands, and we've got good leadership in that area. Also went to the DAC committee, and once again, diving into the details of the COVID pandemic and the impact on our students when it comes to assessment, real challenges there. And so the DAC committee's continuing to look at where we're at and where we're going. And again, it's working on assembling ultimately recommendations to the board for the end of the year. Also participated in some 2+2 meetings to study our budget update with a focus on COVID impact. There was also, kind of hard to believe it's been a month, back in the end of September, there was a technology community forum. I'm going to stop for just a second. We'll see if it that.
Thanks, Mark. Pam.
Okay. Thompson Education Foundation has been exceptionally busy, and with the addition of the Cameron Peak Fire and all the evacuations, there's been a lot of extra work done by Kim Akeley Sharon. So kudos to them. Currently, TEF is offering $50 and King Soopers gift cards to any of the students, families, or staff members who are affected by the evacuations. So if you know anyone that might be affected and are evacuated, please, you can let Kim Akeley Sharon know at Thompson Education Foundation, and we will connect them for their $50 gift card. And you can also donate to that fund. Is my mic not working? I just saw Matt shake his head. You can also donate to the Thompson Education Foundation online if you want to be a part of that, and that's just thompson.org. They have organized a drive-through trick-or-treat experience on Saturday, October 31st. Many TSD families will be participating. Both blocks of reservations filled in under an hour, so there aren't any more slots, sadly. But this is pretty awesome community coming together. Kim's gathered everyone. I know there's a couple board members who will be participating at the TSD booth, and our partners with TEF are the Ranch and My Big Day events. And then finally, the Governor's Art Show is on display at the Loveland Art Museum. This show is hosted by Loveland Rotary and Thompson Valley Rotary Clubs. They do donate 1/3 of the proceeds to the Thompson Education Foundation for unhoused youth, so it's a very important fundraiser. Please consider a visit. You can reserve a viewing spot on the Loveland Museum website at lovelandmuseumgallery.org. And I think that's about it for now. Thanks.
All right. Well, I have kind of a different report. My wife and I were traveling for most of the time in between these two board meetings, and I was very happy that I had taken along the school board journal. The 5 national parks in Utah were very crowded and very hot, and I appreciated being able to go to the motel at night, and rather than watching TV, I actually read some articles in the school board journal, and I'm looking forward, fellow board members, to sharing a couple of the ideas that I gleaned from those with you, maybe at a study session or in some other experience. So that's my kind of strange report.
I've had just 2 meetings, 1338 on teacher effectiveness, and then the family pie, which is, we're still working at getting organized for this year, getting many of the new parents involved, but because of the online, it's been really difficult, so we're still in progress with that piece of it.
No report, Madam President.
Presented by the Colorado Association of School Boards, and I already forgot what the other thing was, so it's been one of those months. So that will be it for my report. Let's see. Okay, that takes us to the end of public participation. I don't believe we had anybody sign up for public comment, correct, Laura Lee? Okay, and we did not have any phone-in comment as well today either, so we can move right on to section 5, which is the action consent items. I will go ahead and read the action consent agenda items. We'll take them as a whole. Let me know, board members, if anyone wants to pull anything off. Otherwise, we will vote on them as a whole. And when we get to it, I'll have some folks read the proclamations to recognize the principals and the classified staff. So item 5.1 is approval of personnel extra duty coaching recommendations. 5.2, expenditures over $50,000. 5.3, second reading of policy IHCDA and IHCDAR, concurrent enrollment. Item 5.4, second reading of policy IHCDB, concurrent enrollment / assent. Item 5.5, second reading policy JGA and JGAR, assignment of new students to classes and grade levels. Item 5.6, second reading of policy JQ and JQE, student fees. Item 5.7, approval of the Thompson School District organizational chart. 5.8, approval of the proclamation for National Principals Month. And 5.9, approval of the proclamation Classified Staff Appreciation Week, October 19th through 23rd. So is there anything anyone would like to remove from that list? Stu?
I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask about 5.3.
Which was, oh, the policy and concurrent enrollment. So do you want me to pull it off, or is it just a informational?
They're just informational questions. You want me to ask those now, or do you want to?
You know what, let's go ahead and just pull that off, and we'll take it up separate if there's more than one question. So, Laura Lee, go ahead and mark 5.3, we'll take that up separate. And anything else? Okay. So we will remove 5.3 and renumber all the following ones down. So now we have 5.1 through 5.8 renumbered. And I don't see any gifts, so Pam, there's nothing for you to read there. I have the proclamation for National Principals Month, and Barb Cruz, you were going to read that one for me? Go ahead and do it now, and then we'll take the vote.
Resolution National Principals Month. Whereas school leaders are expected to be educational visionaries, instructional leaders, assessment experts, disciplinarians, community builders, public relations experts, budget analysts, facility managers, special programs administrators, and guardians of various legal, contractual, and policy mandates and initiatives, as well as being entrusted with our young people, our most valuable resource. And whereas principals set the academic tone for their schools and work collaboratively with teachers to develop and maintain high curriculum standards, develop mission statements, and set performance goals and objectives. And whereas the vision, dedication, and determination of a principal provides the mobilizing force behind any school reform effort. And whereas leadership is second only to classroom instruction among all school-related factors that contribute to what students learn at school, according to research conducted by the Wallace Foundation. And whereas the celebration of National Principals Month honors elementary, middle, and high school principals and recognizes the importance of school leadership in ensuring that every child has access to a high-quality education. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Thompson School District proclaims October 2020 as National Principals Month.
And for Classified Staff Appreciation Week.
Essential part of the Thompson R2J School District's educational system. And whereas classified employees are dedicated to assisting in the provision of quality education for the students of this district. And whereas classified employees perform the daily cleaning and maintenance of school property, safely transport students, prepare and serve nutritious lunch or nourishing lunches, in fact, maintaining records and reports, and assisting in classrooms and on school playgrounds. And whereas the Thompson School District would like to recognize the role classified school employees hold in our educational system and to salute them for the invaluable service they provide to our students and to our communities. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Thompson School District proclaims October 19th through 23rd, 2020 as Classified Staff Appreciation Week and urges parents, students, and administrators to salute these dedicated men and women.
Thank you, Dawn. All right, I will entertain a motion and a second to approve the action consent items minus 5.3. Okay, I have a motion from Pam Howard and a second from Dawn Kirk to approve the action consent items renumbered to 5.1 through 5.8. Are there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, if you'd call the roll, please, Laura Lee. Aye.
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 Thank you, and that passes unanimously. All right, we will now take up item 5 point, previously item 5.3 will become action item 5, whatever number, Laura Lee, I guess it would be 6, and then you'll renumber all the discussion items, 6.1, which is second reading policy IHCDA and IHCDA-R concurrent enrollment. And Stu, you had some questions.
I have just a couple of quick questions for Dawn. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, and you may not know the answer to these questions, and if so, maybe you can just send an email to the board with this information. I'm just curious as to the usual number of courses that a student enrolls in, if the student is enrolled in the concurrent process.
So we typically, well, oh, wow, that is loud. What we typically see is about an average of 2 over the course of the year. We do have some who will take 3 or 4, obviously to get an average, and we have some that are 1, but it's around 2, 2.5 is about the average.
Do you know about how many of our high school students actually participate in concurrent enrollment classes?
Oh, I thought I sent that in an email already, and it's not off the top of my head.
That's
200, it was in that 200, 250 range.
yeah. Okay.
I think.
And my other question is, I know that we have concurrent enrollment arrangements with the community colleges. Which of the 4-year schools do we also have concurrent enrollment with,
We also have with CU, and we've got some agreements with CSU as well.
Okay. Thanks, Lori. Those were my questions.
Sure, you bet. Okay, so I will now entertain a motion to approve the policy IHCDA and IHCDA-R.
So moved.
Seconded.
I have a motion from Stu and a second from Dawn to approve policy IHCDA and IHCDA-R concurrent enrollment. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Laura Lee, if you please call the roll. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, and that policy is unanimously adopted. Moving to the discussion items section of our meeting tonight. First up is item 6.1, a Riverview Pre-K-8 school construction update. Tammy and Todd? All righty.
Good evening. I'll get used to this microphone. Good evening, Board of Education, Madam President, and Dr. Schaefer. Thanks for the opportunity to present the Riverview Pre-K-8 and a overall status update from budget to current construction status and a review of an issue that we're working through. The budget update. The numbers there reflect where we are overall. So total project budget is $45,500,000. We've encumbered or committed $43 million of that, and we've paid $17.3 million of that that's been encumbered. The calculations below that are just a quick, simple check that kind of gives us an idea if we're tracking correctly, if the schedule's matching what we've paid to date, and if we're on track to complete in time, and the cash flow is supported. Excuse me. And all of those numbers hover right around 40%, which tells me that we're in good shape. There's no big bust between those numbers and those quick calculations that kind of shows where we are. So that's the important piece. The fun piece now, the team is very excited to show you some pictures comparing the renderings and what we did during design compared to where it is as of today. So the first slide is a picture on the left of current status from a drone shot that's facing west. So the drawing on the right shows how we designed it with the track on the far west end or the top of the sheet and the building on the bottom of the sheet or the east end. So you can kind of see from the building there, it's taking shape very well. The next page is just a couple of simple shots of the track. There's not a lot of action out there yet except it being graded, and the curb around the entire track has been poured. And that is the equipment and athletic storage building. Going to the next page, labeled North Elevation Area A. On the left, again, is a rendering of what we thought it might look like during design. And on the right is how it's coming along. Right at the end of the lift there where the workers stand is the blue stucco. And it's kind of hard to see in that picture, but it's a pretty good match to what we designed and what we presented to the community during the process. So going to the next slide, labeled Elevation Area B. That is a pretty good shot of design and current status. So again, you'll start seeing the brick finished up, the blue stucco around the window area, and then the rest of the finishes come along on the outside there. The next page shows brick elevations for both area A and B, and A and B are the north elevations of the building. And again, you don't get it too close usually from a rendering to a brick pattern, but I was kind of surprised when I was putting this together of how close it is. The next location is the east elevation at the main entry. It's not a direct comparison, but looking from the second floor down towards the entrance is what you see on the bottom right. And comparing that to what it will look like, you can see the tall framing members will support the mountain scene, or that little bit of a elevation difference there in the rendering. And then the brick will follow on around and continue that pattern. The next page shows the gyms and the tilt-up panels. We had that party early spring of this year and got to see those panels go up. They're now colored to kind of blend in, and the hope there was that they'd blend into the sky a little bit. And on a perfect day, that blue really does align with the color of the sky. The bus loop on the bottom right is also underway. We're looking to pave that and pave a lot of the parking lots here before the weather sets in and shuts us down. On the next page, you'll see the south elevation of the northwest wing A. I know that's kind of confusing, but it's the courtyard piece of the building that faces west towards the mountains, and this is the north section of that. And again, it's just a good idea of where we're coming with the bricks and that cantilevered section that sticks out over with the blue stucco starting to come together. If you'll go to the next page, it is the east elevation, the common/media area. And that picture is pretty much right on comparison to the rendering. Again, you can see some of the colorful aspects that will start coming into play as we proceed, and then the brick wrap around to carry that feel through the whole building. On the next slide is the Commons or Media Center. This is where it kind of gets fun to be able to see what's coming along inside and stand in a certain location and see what it's going to look like one day. What you're seeing in the top left is the rendering of the media center, both the upper and lower floors, and that's exactly where the picture's taken, I think, 2 weeks ago on the bottom right. The next page is the Commons or Music Room, so it's the same area, but looking towards the west wall of that area. On the left, you can see the music room that doubles as a stage that faces the learning stairs. And on the right is a big glass storefront. So you can see the columns on the bottom right picture where they align and really get a feel for how that's coming along. On the next page, the Commons or learning stairs is a pretty good comparison there too of seeing how those learning stairs that can be used for eating, educational sessions, or just getting together with your friends. It's a pretty good rendering again in comparison of where we are in the project. The next page shows the Commons heart of the building also is what we're calling that area. Just another look directly from that stage in the previous slide looking across towards the learning stairs. The area is really coming together. We're starting to look at furniture and how it can all emulate what we thought of during the design process. On that note, the learning stairs, the graphics that go on the front, it's intended to be the erosion or the layers of the earth. And we did start the graphics design advisory group today. So we're starting to put all those ideas together, the brain-based learning and neuroscience of education, how we can incorporate that into the graphics throughout the building. If you'll go to the next page, you'll see the interior. Believe it or not, we are painting in Area A, and that will flow right through the building. There's some blue in there, and it's starting to really come together. We'll start having casework installed in November, so it's really coming along on the inside. The next page is FF&E, which is fixtures, furniture, and equipment. And those design advisory group meetings have started too. We've got Officescapes as our vendor for furniture on board. And these are just some early renderings and some options after having a few focus group meetings with LAM, Early Childhood on the right, and some of the other core team members of the principals, just to get an idea of where to start. So these are the kind of renderings we'll look at as we go through that process, make sure we pick the right items for this school. So with that, I'll turn it over to Todd.
Can I ask you a quick question, Tammy, before you go? On the picture of like the commons and the learning stairs and the music room area, is some of the glass going to be tinted or colored?
Yes.
That is for real. Okay, I couldn't tell if it was
Yes.
just.
Yep, some of it shows and some doesn't, but there's a mix of blue, green, and yellow, lightly tinted glass.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Education, Dr. Schaefer, Top County Chief Operations Officer. So in alignment with Strive 2025 and Section 4.1, Transparency of District Resources, what I want to do is report to you tonight on the issue we did have on the site that, as you can see by the timeline, we found in July. We worked through in August, September, and really have come to final remedy in the last couple of weeks. So as you notice in the two circle sections, because we have amazing partners with FCI Constructors and Wold Architects, there was a problem noticed in those two cantilevers, so the part of the building that actually extends out without a structural support. So you see in the picture, that actually shows the issue. That middle picture shows where it's braced up. Because the partners noticed it, we immediately went into action, and then over the last couple months, we've hired an independent structural engineer to come out, not just to check and verify this problem, but then verify the entire building and structure is, one, safe, and two, is what the taxpayers paid for. So our goal was to make sure that when the issue was found, it wasn't just isolated here, but it was an issue that we made sure was corrected throughout the entire building. So you'll see on the second page, this goes through, the first page here goes through the timelines of the steps. The second page really goes into how we approach the problem. So there's critical considerations for TSD and protecting of the district. So those are some of the items that we really dove into in great detail. Like I said, the design verification, work with legal to make sure there was nothing on the legal side that we left open, and then make sure the cost and the responsibility was not borne by the district, but of the parties that designed it. The other critical project considerations you'll see is we want to make sure first, when we found the issue, that there was no safety issues. So we did go through initially and make sure that the building was safe and there was nothing that was deemed unsafe. But then we went through and said, okay, we know that it's safe. We want to make sure that we're getting the building we paid for, for the 50, 75-year building. So we did hire an independent structural engineer to come in and work side by side, outside of the project team, but side by side with the project team to review the structure to make sure that the building that we're going to sign off on the end is then what we agreed to pay for in the beginning. So the report tonight is just to update you on the process and progress of the issue, and here to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions, board? No? I have one quick one, Todd. The inspections by the third party, who pays for that?
Yes, so that will be not the responsibility of the district, so it'll
That
be.
is not the responsibility of the district?
Not of the fixes, no. So we're
Okay.
hiring independent third-party inspections that will not be for the
Okay.
fixes, the responsibility of the district, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the quick easy summary is there's no financial responsibility for the district for this issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Terrific. Anybody else? Questions? No? All right. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Tammy. It's exciting to see that, and we're looking forward to seeing it in person tomorrow,
Yes,
correct?
it'll be great.
We're still on for that.
We are. we're
Okay.
in.
Unless it snows or something, right?
Oh, well, we almost hope so, actually.
Right. Okay, thank you. Next up is item 6.2, Strive 2025 update. Dr. Schaefer, are you heading that one up?
I'm just going to tee it up, and then
Okay.
I'm going to have invite members of my team. So last year, in August, the Board of Education approved our strategic plan, Strive 2025, and our commitment was to provide regular updates to the Board of Education in terms of our progress towards our very ambitious goals in our 4 key success areas, as well as our portrait of a Thompson School District graduate. So this evening, members of the team will be reporting to you on progress made and our next steps within each of the 4 areas. To continue to promote social distancing and all those other health and safety requirements, what we'll do instead of waiting for questions at the end is each team member completes his or her section. Please ask them their questions. So we will start with focus area number 1, student achievement, and Don Huckabee.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Schaefer, Don Huckabee, Chief Academic Officer, and the first focus area for Strive 2025 is student achievement. And just as a reminder as to what is our goal here, our goal by 2025 is that TSD will move from a rating of accredited to a rating of accredited with distinction. I would love to be able to share with you today what our rating was for the 2020 school year, but there is no rating. So we don't have a benchmark, at least specific to that part of the goal. However, under all of our focus areas, we have the goal, but then we also have what are some of those other indicators. And so we'll be going over those other indicators as far as data with you tomorrow at your study session. Progress we've made. One of the things we really wanted to work on was making sure that we could operationalize the Thompson educational expectations, and we did that and are continuing to do that through district-wide professional learning and feedback, especially the work that we did this summer with teachers. Providing high-quality professional learning opportunities through the modules, the courses, also through coaching and mentoring for our educators to attain the enhanced content knowledge and pedagogy and literacy and mathematics, and then meeting social and emotional needs of our students, as well as for our leaders' instructional leadership strategies. We have been deploying the Thompson Rapid Improvement Teams and process to support our building leaders and their teams, primarily for schools that are identified through state or federal accountability, but we're also looking at how do we expand that beyond. Maybe it's not as rapid, but it is definitely making sure we have those improvement strategies in place. For the next slide, we're also implementing a curriculum adoption cycle that reflects the practices that are inclusive of diverse stakeholders. We are launching the Thompson Career Campus with 4 pathways. We've done that. That's pretty awesome. We are evaluating the remote learning practices and how we incorporate what we've learned as best practices in there to our in-person learning to provide more robust learning opportunities. We are integrating technology in 16 UTA, or ubiquitous technology schools. We've provided curriculum-aligned pedagogical and operational software for blended learning, and we're implementing short and long-term instructional technology professional development using a variety of professional development methods throughout this different ways that we can engage with teachers and principals as well as our classified staff. So our next steps in focus area number 1, we're going to continue to review the qualitative and quantitative data about student learning and academic performance, especially through this pandemic. to identify the achievement concerns as well as what effective practices do we have going on that we want to continue to replicate. We're continuing to deploy resources, tools, and professional development to improve educational outcomes, utilizing our multi-tiered systems of support framework. Really, this one is around aligning our Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 supports for students in academic areas, as well as social, emotional, and behavioral domains. We are working on K-3 literacy professional development in a balanced instructional literacy approach, and continue to implement the training and installing systems and deploying the devices for students at our remaining 14 schools that do not yet have ubiquitous technology access. Focus area 1.
Questions?
Like every day, first off, this 6 months, it has changed like a 180 from what you were doing. It still aligns and it's still focused on the right things. And so thank you for that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. My team appreciates that too. Our team, it's not my team. All right,
Thanks.
Focus area number 2 is inclusive and supportive culture. And our goal is by 2025, as measured by survey results, TSD will increase by 10% the number of students, staff, parents, and community members who strongly agree that they feel welcomed, safe, and supported. So our progress to date here, we've been conducting training for staff across the district in trauma-informed practices, restorative practice, and PBIS. We are training staff in culturally responsive practices. We're implementing protocols for environmental audits to look around classrooms and schools for inclusive practices and materials. This is Todd, so I'm going to go ahead and say it for him. We've also have secured vestibules installed at our high schools, and we're planning for the same at middle schools from our BEST grant. We produce and implement safety systems for COVID-19. It's been a huge thing for our safety of our staff and students, and conducting staff training sessions as required for all of our new systems. Additionally, we've been convening diverse stakeholders in the development of our district plan to support enhanced family school community partnerships. That really came through loudly through DAC. Reviewing board policies and procedures for alignment, developing protocols for communications to families who do not speak or read English, utilizing a web-based newsletter tool district-wide that can be automatically translated into languages other than English as needed by our families and community members, reaching out to stakeholders for input and feedback on a regular basis, and surveying our students, staff, families, and community for baseline data to meet this goal. So our next steps are, we need to get the baseline data. So we will be launching the Culture and Climate Survey the week of November 2nd. And that will go out to students, staff, families, and the community to provide that baseline data. We were going to do this last spring, and April just didn't seem like quite the right time to do that. So we are now we're moving forward with it here, and from here forward we'll have multiple data points to be able to students will be looking at grades 3 and up, so it will be 3rd graders through 12th graders, and will be given to students during their in-person school time. That's pretty exciting. Educational equity framework is another thing that we are developing. We're in the process of developing that so that we'll be ready to implement in the 21-22 school year. And we're looking at a multi-year professional development plan for academic and social emotional learning support so that staff know what's coming and when, and more importantly, the why behind it.
Questions, anyone? Stu?
Dawn, I have a question about the social and emotional learning. I'm sure that it's been a challenge to deliver that curriculum in a remote environment. What kind of feedback are you getting from staff, and are you getting anything from families and kids? We all know it's so important, and we thought we'd be able to roll it out in a traditional manner. So could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So we purchased some curriculum for K-8, And it's designed in short-term lessons and modules that can be delivered whether the students are in person or remote. It's very easy to implement, and a lot of social emotional learning beyond the curriculum is how do we build relationships, and we really, that was a key component of the training that we offered staff back in August, is it's about relationships. Make sure you make those connections with your students. But the actual curriculum itself, K-8, is going well. We're not getting, in fact, part of social emotional learning curriculum is also about self-management. And I heard a story from one of our principals of it was the second day of school for first graders, and they were sitting in their place, and the teacher was going through the protocols, the practices, the routines. This is what we're going to do. And the one child raised, I think it was a little boy, raised his hand and said, "When are we going to start learning?" Because the routines were so in place from remote, and they had such a sense of community already from being remote learners, that moving into the classroom presence was no big deal for them. And we're talking 5- and 6-year-olds. So that social emotional is really that building of self, and they felt right at home and comfortable.
That's a great story.
Thanks, Dawn. Any other questions? I have one just about the survey. Is there going to be anything embedded in that will ask about or reflect the district's handling of the COVID, learning environment kind of thing? Will that be included in that? I know you want to be able to use it as a baseline for going forward, so hopefully we'll never have a going forward on this, but it'd be interesting to have information on it as well.
So we didn't put that in this survey. We do need to gather that information, but we'll do it in a different way for that exact reason, is we need to have the survey stay consistent moving forward.
Okay, great, thanks. Anything else? Nope, okay. Next up is Dr. Sievers, maybe?
Madam President, School Board, Dr. Schaefer, Bill Sievers, Chief Human Resources Officer. So focus area 3 is human talent, and the overall arching goal is TSD will maintain an annual staff retention rate of 85% or higher. So basically, that data that we use is a CD report, and it's the personnel turnover rates. So those are different categories that we kind of evaluate and see which of our areas that we need to improve on the most. So we extensively have discussions about that document, things and practices that we do within the district. So desired outcomes, 3.1 is ensure recruitment and retention of high quality staff. 3.2 is ensure continuous improvement and growth mindset. So the progress is human resources attended a virtual job fair because of the pandemic that we're in right now. So a lot of virtual job fairs we're trying to get to. So it's AA, double E to recruit educators, and that's more of a state job fair that we're looking for teachers at. And then we attended the Colorado Association of Latinos Administration and Superintendent job fair to recruit applicants of color. And we hired an applicant from that job fair that we went to. So we're pretty proud of that, because at times when we go to job fairs, when you do out-of-state job fairs and things like that, you might not, hire somebody from those fairs, but we're pretty excited, and the continued work that we'll do with that. Recreation of our onboarding and orientation process for employees, making the process seamless, accessible, and welcoming. And the big word out of that is welcoming. We want to be a destination district, so the more welcoming we can be, making our process and onboarding fun, of course, like you want to make it fun, but also as seamless as you can. And then enhance professional development through virtual access for all PD offerings with our 3 employee groups. And we're pretty proud of the work that we're doing around the classified professional development that we're doing, and we're doing it all virtual. So we're creating modules where classified staff can have access to it, not just on one day, but throughout their throughout the school year. So we're working on that, and we're pretty excited about that. And any questions on that slide before I move over, or you just want me to move over?
I think we're good.
Swipe to the right. Okay, great. Desired outcomes 3.3 is ensure the working environment reflects a positive culture and climate, and that's extremely important. Overall staff retention rates are 78.3% for staff prior to the 2021 school year. Celebratory events scheduled for classified and all substitute employees. Continuing TSD climate survey of all employee groups, and we have some baseline data around the climate survey that we did last year. And then continuing excellence award recognition, all employee groups and employee teams. Thank you.
Sorry,
Thank you, Board.
my glasses keep fogging up here. Anybody have any questions? Stu, go ahead.
How does the staff retention rate for 2020, 2021 compare with the previous year, or maybe some of the years even prior to that?
It's a little lower than the previous year because they do head count from year to year. So it's all the last 2 years, basically what they do with the data. But it's not off that much. It's just a small percentage. And basically when we look at that, because the thing you have to realize of the 78.3%, it's all staff.
Yes.
So there's like 6 or 7 different categories, meaning like administrators are in there, skilled positions, teachers, principals. Paraprofessionals is the highest percentage that we look at as far as turnover rate. The other thing I'd like to talk about that briefly is we try to analyze the data first to understand, so how do they get these results? And as we go through here, we kind of look at our internal measures first, and then we have this massive report that we do every single year through CDE. But for example, if you have a teacher that moves to administrator, that kind of goes against your number, because then it shows that person left. But then, so even though there's a new position, that still goes against you. So that's why we really kind of delve into the data and try to understand it the best. So then when we put measures in place, that we're able to progress monitor that. So we're kind of right in that ballpark, which is the typical average right now for all the districts, because we get a report of all the districts, so then we kind of look at our neighboring districts and see where theirs is. And then the great thing about I'm going to talk forever, but the great thing about Human Resources Network within the state is we have close relationships with all the HR teams within the state. So for example, if one district only has an 8% turnover rate for teachers, then we reach out to that HR department and just say, hey, so what are some ideas that you're doing, or what things are you seeing? What's the trend data? So the great thing is a lot of conversation where we're not trying to invent the wheel just by ourselves. Like, we really reach out. So, that's the fun part about data and talking to other HR departments.
Thanks.
Dawn?
Just love that we've done some diversity in the virtual job fairs, and I'm wondering if that's going to continue and if we're going to expand to different ones.
Yeah, it's going to continue forever. It just depends what they offer, right? Because they don't have it set up for classified staff. It's really, there's teachers of color that we do too. In the past, we've gone to that, but they haven't set up anything virtual yet for that. So we continue to look for diversity and really looking for high quality staff. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a question so much as a comment, but I would imagine that retention among all employee groups is going to be affected by COVID. So both a little bit for last school year, and then this coming school year. So would it be maybe more helpful, rather than looking at like comparing our percentage this year to our percentage last year of retention, to look at maybe our neighboring districts or some other factor? Or maybe you're not seeing that. Maybe you don't think that's going to change. I don't know.
Well, it's going to change because we have 2 data points that we really look at. One is the overall CDE, and they compare one year to another year. So we'll get the results from this year next year, and it's posted like July, August. That's too far away to guess, right? So we have that overarching benchmark that I use, but then we've developed the internal measures that we evaluate too. So we put in data every month, from our system to see, okay, So where's our employee groups the highest right now? Like, for example, we have an outlier point right now saying that we have a high amount of resignations during this certain month, but it's not as, right, because you first think of COVID and you think, okay, so we got 32 resignations or something like that. But then when you look at the previous year at this time, it's not that far off.
Mm-hmm.
So then when we look at that number and then we break it down to what are the reasons people are leaving, like kind of that exit survey, we kind of get an idea of what are some of the reasons. But COVID is a part of it, but not a huge part of the number, just because the accommodations that we're working with staff on right now, we're meeting the needs of our staff now. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they're resigning or quitting because of that, because we have an accommodation in place, and there are things that we're looking to, as far as granting leaves for a certain time, working with staff that may have anxiety, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Anything else? All right. I think that finishes you up, Bill, and then Gordon on stewardship of resources.
Madam President, Dr. Schaefer, members of the board, I'm Gordon Jones, Chief Financial Officer for the district. Focus Area 4 deals with stewardship of resources, and while I get the pleasure of speaking on this topic tonight, it is certainly not a singular responsibility. This is something that everybody across the district has an active role in. But the first two desired outcomes from Focus Area 4 are ensuring transparency in the use of district resources, and 4.2, ensure prioritization of capital and human resources. So some of the progress that has been made over the last year since Strive 2025 was adopted. We are nearing completion of the 2019-20 audit, external audit, and then that along with that goes the Comprehensive Annual Financial Reports, or CAFR as it's affectionately referred to. The anticipation is that we will add to reserve balances for the 2019-20 audit. I'm fairly confident in that. We're still waiting on some final calculations that the outside auditors are working on. As you can imagine, 2019-20 was an unusual year from a financial reporting standpoint as well. There were some things that took place that don't take place in a normal year. So there's some adjustments, which is good. It tests us as a team to be able to make sure that we're remaining diligent on how we're reporting our financial results. We're staying compliant with what the governmental standards are for accounting, and having that level of responsibility to our taxpayers in the community. Also, further progress from the finance side of things, budget templates for this current year that we're in, the 2020-21 year. There were some changes and adjustments made in the budget templates that we use internally. That's to allow budget managers to provide their input on how we categorize or group certain costs within the financial reporting, really in the budgeting aspect here. So it gives budget managers a bigger buy-in, if you will, on budgeting dollars where they think the dollars should be budgeted, adding categories where reasonable, deleting categories that are no longer necessary. So there was significant progress made in that, and we look forward to continuing that process heading into the next budget cycle as well. Another point of progress, managing the long-range master plan. So our master planning committee meets fairly frequently through the operations department, and deals with managing those assets of the district from a building standpoint, asset management, student projections that they also would deal with, educational enhancements, overseeing all the bond dollars. All of those things were significant progress was made in the 1920 year, and we anticipate that continuing on for at least the next 3 or 4 years as the bond dollars continue to be managed. A very significant item was leveraging our bond dollars with available BEST grants from the state level. We were very fortunate, again, from the generosity of the voting public in 2018 to pass the bond. that we had funds available to match, to provide the matching portion of BEST grants, which is BEST is Building Exceptional Schools Today, to be able to put in the very elaborate bid process that takes place in that regard, to then be able to be awarded all 3 of the BEST grants that we applied for. So very good use of resources from the bond funds to be able to extend those, really using that money to turn into new money or additional money. Desired outcome 4.3 has to do with purposeful partnerships with businesses, higher education, local government, and the community at large. Some of the highlights of the progress that was made in this area: regular meetings with what was called for by the board in the ballot questions, the Citizens Mill Levy Override Audit Committee, or CMAC, and the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, or CBOC. Both those groups, both those committees have spent time reviewing expenditures, offering input, understanding more from a financial reporting standpoint, and an operations and building standpoint. A lot of good feedback from that group, from those regular meetings. Also meetings that took place with Front Range Community College, Ames, business partners that we had in advance of the opening of TCC. We sought a lot of feedback and received a lot of feedback from the community, from those groups, on what a career technical education program should look like and some of the desired outcomes that they have from that. And then from an ITS perspective, there are quarterly meetings with the Community Technical Expertise Committee, or CTEC, again to talk about long-range ITS initiatives that the district is undertaking. Next steps, continuing monitoring the reporting of other districts, other governmental entities, to determine how we could enhance our reporting internally. Not internally, our internal processes to report externally to the community. There's a lot of good ideas out there. We certainly don't have the patent on all good financial reporting, so we're always looking at new and innovative ways to present information. 1920 and 2021 in the CAFR will certainly provide opportunities there with what we've experienced from a pandemic perspective, if nothing else. But then you put the bond on top of that, the MLO, there's a lot of opportunities there. Analysis of potential ballot issues this November. There are several key initiatives, a couple in particular, that could have a significant impact, either positive or negative, on school financing, both in the short term and the long term. And as a department, as a team, we're certainly monitoring those items, making forecast projections on what that could look like for the financial impact on the district. More in-depth tracking of the progress on bond projects. I think we do a very good job on how we're monitoring the bond progress, the expenditures, the POs that go in, the encumbrance of funds, making sure that financial records match those of operations. But as we get further into that, and as projects especially start getting wrapped up, we'll want to make sure we're being diligent in providing a level of reporting that the community can see that those dollars were spent as they intended and well spent. From an ITS perspective, maintaining a 5-year staff computer refresh cycle. At the risk of speaking for Dr. Kuhn, I know this has been a long-term initiative of his, and I think we're finally on schedule for that, to be able to continue that 5-year computer refresh cycle. And then implementing the 5-year cycle with 20% of our schools, or a fifth of our schools annually, getting that refresh. And I believe right now all technology within the district, all personal technology computers are within no computer older than 5 years at this point.
Thanks, Gordon. Questions, board? No? That means you're doing a good job?
Good.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Almost, you almost got down.
This one's probably for Matt. From your perspective, first of all, fantastic that you achieved a 5-year staff computer refresh cycle. Knowing the tech industry,
So the question is, when would we want to go to even better than a 5-year refresh cycle? Well, that's a very hard question to answer because budget constraints right now make 5-year still challenging. With CARES Act money, we have really been able to accelerate our goal of getting on UTA for all schools and then thus a 5-year cycle for the schools, for the student devices. The staff has been a longer term effort, but we're there with them too. So if the budget is able to do a better refresh, then we could definitely look at that, but I feel like the driver is more the budget than the actual technology. Obviously, 4 years would be better than 5 in many cases, but we have also tried to buy better equipment than we used to buy in the past, so it does last better than it used to. Like, for example, some of the PCs that you'll still see staff using are not real great that were bought about 3 years ago because they're really like a 3-year device. But the ones we buy nowadays are supposed to last 5 years. So we're trying to, it costs a little bit more, but at least then we do get 5 years out of it. So it's a tough question to answer, but I would say that right now we want to just see if we can hang on to 5 years for a while before we go too far towards 4 years.
Thanks, Matt. And Dawn, you were going to talk about the portrait of a graduate.
Yes, so this is an area that when we reported back to you in January, COVID happened in March, and so we have not done as much progress around this as we would like. But we do still have intentions of really making that comparison of the 5 attributes that are in the portrait of a graduate. How do they connect to our work habits, and making those very transparent and explicit, reviewing how we're going to assess those the 5 attributes as well. And we need to convene our focus groups to bring in students, staff, families to help us in really what does that look like when we say that a student, when they graduate from Thompson, that we know that they are a collaborator, that we know that they're a good citizen, that they have the communication skills that they need, they're critical thinkers, and that they are self-advocates. So we still have a number of things to continue to work on with this. And that's kind of, now that we've got school year up and running, we certainly talk about this. We keep it at the forefront of everything, professional development. We've got nice big posters, hanging in schools to remind students and staff that these are what we're striving towards in addition to the academic side of being a good student and a graduate.
Thanks. Questions? No? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for this update on the strategic plan. Dr. Schaefer, did you have any wrap-up comments?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is the strategic plan still keeps us anchored in our work. And so even though COVID has created additional opportunities and complexities, we still haven't lost sight on really why we're here and what our key priorities are. And so it will continue, like I said, to keep our focus on these. Schools exist to prepare students for life beyond pre-K-12, so we want to get them college, career, and community ready. And these 4 facets of our strategic plan, along with the portrait of the graduate, again, provides our guiding light, our North Star. And what we're hoping to do, and hopefully you saw tonight, that they're really more than just words on a page. They're really our actions. It's everything that we do here in the district revolves around this work. And even in the midst of a pandemic, we're still doing what the strategic plan lays out for us to do. So our plan is to come back to you in June with another update. And then, as we've committed, the board, we want the board to partner with us as well. If you see opportunities, if you have feedback for us, if our priorities, while we want to keep our priorities focused, if you have any other input or suggestions, we certainly are always open to that.
I would just add that it's pretty great. I've already said how much I appreciate how it aligns, but it's pretty great that over something like a pandemic, this held up as much as it did. We talked about specific factors that had to do with COVID, but it didn't just throw the plan out the window, and that's really quite an achievement.
Thanks, Dr. Schaefer. Okay, we will move on to item 6.3, enrollment update, and I think, Gordon, you have that for us?
Again, Madam President, Dr. Schaefer, members of the board, Gordon Jones, Chief Financial Officer for the district. To start with, just as our most recent topic covered, the strategic plan, the annual enrollment count process aligns most closely with Focus Area 4, Stewardship of Resources, and particularly desired outcomes 4.1 and 4.2, as we have just discussed. From a very high level perspective, I just want to give you an overview of October count, what that entails, what it looks like, some of the trends that we're seeing, and then what some of the budget implications might be of that. So the first comment I'll make is even though we've had the October count, which takes place on October 1st each year, these are preliminary numbers. We still have staff working on finalizing on what those counts are that will be turned over or submitted to the state, to CDE, to certify those numbers. So this is a work in progress, but hopefully these are directionally correct on this presentation. So a quick overview of the basics. October count, again, is essentially that, counting the number of students in the district on a particular day. That has taken place. There are allowances if students are absent on that first day or on that count day. There are allowances that the state makes that we can look at the week before and the week after to demonstrate that they are enrolled and actively attending and still be able to count that student. It just requires a little more work on the district's part. The membership on count day, so membership and head count I'm using interchangeably here, is the basis that leads us to funded pupil count, which is exactly that, what the state funds a district by. The funded pupil count is a number that's lesser than the membership because it's factored down in the past primarily by half-day kindergarten because it was funded at 58%. Now that kindergarten is funded full-time, there's less of a difference between our membership and our funded pupil count. Once we get to funded pupil count, we multiply that by the PPR, or per pupil revenue, to determine the funding for the district for the year. This year we are experiencing a lower student count than what we anticipated when we look at last year's October count, as well as what the budget for this year anticipated. So some of the whys behind that lower student count, there are at the lower levels, especially at the kindergarten level, there are some families that are electing to not enroll their student this year and waiting till next year. They may be electing a additional preschool year before having those students enroll for the next year. Berthoud, in the Berthoud area schools, last year in the budget, we, given the construction that's taking place in Berthoud, we did anticipate an increase. That increase, while the building has still taken place, building permits are being issued, perhaps at a higher rate than even previously. The building permits are being issued, construction is taking place, houses are being sold, families are moving in, but it's not yielding the number of students yet that we anticipated, that we've historically seen. We still think that growth is coming in the Berthoud area here, but it just hasn't materialized for this particular year. Some families, given the pandemic and the approach of the district to, with the options that we have for a completely online or an in-person when available, some families have elected to homeschool students. Especially at the elementary level. It's anecdotal information, but those families may be saying, if I have to be home with my child for an online program, I'm just going to homeschool them instead. We'll see a couple figures later on in this presentation that really highlight that fact. Enrollment in one of our charter schools in the district has increased, New Vision. They haven't increased their capacity, the physical capacity, but they have increased the rounds that they have available in some of their elementary grades primarily. So that has yielded some higher head count for the charter school that some of those students came from TSD non-charter schools. There are expanded online and other options that are available to parents, whether that be in a neighboring district. An example would be Colorado Early College in Poudre School District. Some families opt for those programs. Others, there are various online programs that are available, whether that be through a charter school in another district nearby, or a charter school out of Lakewood or Durango or wherever that may be. Some families make that election. Some parents could have been seeking that in-person experience from the first day of school, and that wasn't available here, although I will say that most of the districts around Thompson did not have that option available either. The final comment on this is, in talking with my peers around the state, this is a statewide trend. This is not a Thompson trend. It is not a northeastern Colorado trend or northern Colorado trend. This is a statewide trend that districts are seeing from decreased enrollment from what they'd anticipated. Looking forward to the next slide, this compares the 3 time periods of last year's October count versus our budget for this year versus our anticipated October count for this year. The key thing that I'll point out, 2 things. These amounts do not include the charter schools. Just as a point of reminder to the board and to the community at large, the charter population is included in the district's numbers from the state, the head count numbers, enrollment numbers that we submit, but we being the district, serve only as a pass-through entity for those dollars. So they even though their student count is included, the funding for those students goes directly to the charters. The other thing I'll point out here is the largest decrease that we've seen versus budget is 800 students down at the elementary level. That is by far the largest level that we've seen a decrease. 800 students down at elementary, 164 at middle school, and 84 down from budget at high school for a total of 1,048 anticipated fewer students than budget. That's a 7.6% decrease. So that 7.6% decrease, when I again have conversations around the state with my peers, anywhere from 2 to 8% is a common decrease that they've seen. So some districts as high as 15 or 20%. So while it's at the higher end of that range, it is still within the range that we're seeing from other districts.
Gordon, rather than asking you to go back to this slide, let me ask you a question right now. As you talk to your cohorts around the state, is the elementary number the highest in most other districts also as it is here?
It is. That's a pattern that is very evident around the state, that the largest declines in each of the districts is at the elementary level, just as is witnessed here in Thompson.
Okay, thanks.
Next slide, the next 3 slides actually compare those same 3 time periods, last year's October count versus our budget for this year versus this year's anticipated October count for elementary, middle, and high school over the next 3 slides. It just further pictures those decreases that I've talked about. You'll see on the far right of this slide, I do show the charter schools there because their enrollment does count in our total enrollment from a state purpose. Loveland Classical, fairly flat between the 3 periods, but you can see that significant increase in New Vision for this year's enrollment by adding those additional rounds that they have. A couple other schools that I'll point out, Berthoud Elementary and Ivy Stockwell have some fairly significant decreases. That's again back to the point I mentioned earlier about the yield in the new construction that's taking place just has not materialized yet, but we do anticipate that coming. Next slide is the same information for the middle school levels. A very similar pattern that you'll see there, although less of a number decrease between budget to actual or budget to projected October counts. One thing I will point out on all 3 of these slides, there's a school location called LEAP. That is the program that the district has for those students that are homeschooled but want some level of in-person or bricks and mortar assistance in their education. The district is able to recognize 50% from a funded pupil count perspective of these students. So the reason it's listed as a separate school is because CDE recognizes that as a separate school in the district. And you'll see that at all three levels, elementary, middle, and high school. Moving on to the next slide, high school. Again, a very similar pattern that we see there, although the difference between each one of those bars is much less, much more consistent between the 3 years, which again lends itself to, I think, that 84 students total at the high school level that we are down from budget versus 800 at the elementary level. Moving on to the next slide, this is a comparison by grade from a student membership report. Every Monday at 5 a.m. there's a report that's generated for the district that shows student membership for that particular week. This report compares a time period of September 30th of 2019, which was the date closest to the October count last year, with October 5th of the current year, which again was the date closest to the October count this year. Really the key thing to point out here, and again this is by grade, you can see that significant decrease at the kindergarten level, down 191 students from last year, that same report. The lower overall enrollment of the elementary grades, when you look at especially kindergarten through 4th grade, you can see those decreases from last year's numbers to this year's number. 5th grade was a bit of an anomaly for us. In researching this further, it's really a function of the class sizes. Last year's 5th grade cohort across the district was an exceptionally or unusually larger number of students in 5th grade. This year, the number of students in 5th grade is lower than normal. That creates that bigger difference that you see between the 2 years for 5th grade. The last point that I'll mention on this slide, if you look at the high school grades, especially, well, exactly that, the high school, grade 9 through grade 12, you'll see higher counts there than if you look at the kindergarten numbers. That means that as students matriculate through the system, those students that are in high school now are larger class sizes than the kindergarten class that's replacing them. So when a senior class leaves and a kindergarten class comes in the next year, it's a natural decline in that we're seeing. That, again, is not a Thompson trend or a state trend, but that is more a national trend of the declining birth rate. It's an indication of a declining birth rate. Colorado still remains as a destination state that a lot of people want to move to. It's just families having fewer kids typically. So that's one thing I wanted to point out on that on a by grade basis. The next slide shows some information about leavers, and that is students that were previously enrolled in the district and now have elected to unenroll from the district. So there's a lot of information on this slide, but again, you can see the higher number of leavers. The time period that this represents, I should add, is August 1st through October 1st for last year, and the same August 1st through October 1st this year. You look at the top left graph, and you will see in those elementary grades a higher number of leavers than what we see at the high school levels. Significantly higher this year than last year for those students that have opted to leave. I should point out as well that there are also students that join the district that were not previously enrolled that have enrolled. Those are not reflected on here, so this is not a net number. This is only looking at those students that have left the district. And we do have a fairly significant number of students that join each year as well. The bottom graph that you see there shows the reasons for those students leaving. CDE has codes that they want us to use for what the rationale for families leaving or students leaving the district. The family does not have to provide that information. We do reach out. The family sometimes calls the school and says, I'm unenrolling or disenrolling my student. Other times the student was enrolled in the previous year and doesn't show up for the current year, and schools then do an outreach to try to reach those families and see what the status is. The item that I'll point out there is the biggest item that I see is the transfer to homeschooling. Last year, over that time period, that 3 or 4 month time period, we had 153 students that unenrolled from district schools and went to homeschooling option. This year, 475 students, a 210% increase in those families that elected to homeschool. So certainly there's outreach efforts to any of the families that choose not to attend in the district, but that is one of the more significant items that you see. The other one that I'll point your attention to is the unknown educational setting. That is families that have not provided a reason or one of those codes for where their student went. One of the areas of concern that I'm hearing, not just from what we're seeing, but with other districts across the state, are those students that are unreachable or those families that are unreachable, and we don't know what their status might be. We don't know where the students went. We haven't been able to contact them. We don't know what the status of that population is, and that's a very similar trend that I'm hearing from around the state as well. Here again, you can see the elementary leavers that we have is a much higher percentage in the text on the right-hand side of this slide. Last year, elementary leavers made up 48.1% of the total leavers over that time period. This year, 61.6%. Middle school is about the same, and high school last year, high school leavers were 32%, and this year they're about 17%. So you can see those switches, those transitions that take place at the different levels, elementary certainly being the level that has been impacted the most. What does this mean from a budget perspective? So the financial impact, again, funding is received for the district, to the district by taking our membership count, refining that to the funded pupil count, multiplying funded pupil count by the PPR amount or per pupil revenue amount that the state determines each year. The lower head count obviously then means lower funded pupil count, which means lower funding from the School Finance Act or SFA. The one benefit that the district does have, and it's not just our district, it's most of the districts across the state, in the School Finance Act there's a provision for averaging, it's called. So a district has the option of taking the higher of or the greater of the current year funded pupil count or the average of the current year and up to the 4 prior years. So picture it this way, if you will. A lower student count this year averaged with a higher count for the previous 4 years creates a higher average count. The district is able to utilize that. So while we're down 1,048 students from what we projected on the budget, that translates, again, from a very preliminary standpoint, to 350 students that we are down from a funded pupil count perspective. So a significant decrease or improvement in that area, but 350 students down from a funded pupil count perspective is still a significant number. And here you can see the math, those 350 estimated fewer funded pupils times the $7,662 funded pupil or PPR per pupil revenue results in about a $2.7 million decrease in funding from what was expected on the budget. Some of the thoughts on how we could potentially, options that would be available to the board to how to cover that revenue shortfall. We will have some anticipated savings from being virtual for the first part of the year, primarily from a transportation perspective. There are some dollars that could be saved there. And then by virtue of being able to add to reserve balances over the last 2 years, the estimate, because we don't have 1920 finalized yet, but the estimate is approximately an $8 million add to general fund reserves, which is the district's savings account, if you will, that would be available if the board so chose to utilize that to cover the funding shortfall for the 2020-21 fiscal year that we're in right now. That's a very quick update overview. Any questions I could answer for the board regarding preliminary enrollment figures?
Any questions down this end? Barb?
Our 2+2, but I'm not 100% sure, and I'm looking at my notes, and that's not the same question I'm thinking of, I guess. So our homeschoolers that we don't really, they're homeschooling, but we don't really know what's happening, and they come back, we will find a place for them?
Absolutely, to the
Okay.
answer to your second question. The first, I would like to clarify, we do know those students that
Yeah.
are homeschooling students that have designated
Yeah.
that say that's what they're doing. That unknown educational setting
Right.
is the other category
Right.
that we don't know. Yes, any of these students are absolutely.
They come back, we find a
eligible.
place,
Absolutely.
even though there's no money.
And we would fully expect to recapture some of those students.
For next
In fact, anecdotally, I will tell you that that weekly membership report that I talked about, typically we see that start higher at the beginning of the year, go down to October count. We get a count at October. It continues going down. Sometimes we see a bit of an increase in the second semester when students say, we don't want to change in the middle of a semester. We're going to come at the beginning of the second semester. So we typically see a little bit of a bump there, and then it continues to decrease through the course of the year before then increasing again at the start of the next year. I will tell you that 3 weeks after the October count on the report that just came out, we saw an increase already in that count. So whether we attribute that to having in-person option available now, and that enticed people or convinced people to parents to say, I'm not going to homeschool anymore, or I don't want to be in an online program through another district to come back. That's anecdotal, but that would seem to indicate that. A fairly small number, but we don't see that blip up typically at this time of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Gordon?
I just want to say thank you so much for the deep dive of all of this, and also thank you for spending so much time, not just preparing all of this information, but allowing each of us to do the 2x2 with you and Dr. Schaefer, because I think we would have been here for 3 hours tonight with all of our questions if we hadn't had that, that background. So it was just so great to hear it a second time. So thanks for everything, and for you and your staff.
I appreciate that comment, and thank you for my staff as well, although I will be chastised by my cabinet members by being 5 or 10 minutes over my allotted time on this.
It's okay. I was running a clock on you, Gordon, just so you know. So I'll take it off your time next time.
I would welcome that. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Gordon. I'm going to give us a 5-minute break. Anybody object to that? Okay, 5 minutes, so we will be back here at whatever time 5 minutes from now is. 7:56. All right, we all here? Okay, I'm going to, sorry about that. I'm going to call us back to order. All right, next up is item 6.4, Fall Learning Update. Dawn Huckabee.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. So tonight, I'm going to share with you some information about our return to learn, and as Dr. Schaefer mentioned it in his report, as of this week, we have all of our students, EC through 8, have had an opportunity to be back in the building, and our high school students will join 9 through 12. I won't be focusing on Thompson Connect Online because we had a presentation on that 2 weeks ago. So our connections to Strive 2025 in student achievement is really looking at ensuring all students meet and exceed performance and or growth targets, that we're ensuring social, emotional, behavioral, and physical programs that provide a supportive learning environment. In focus area 2, ensuring that our learning environments support a positive culture and climate, and ensure our facilities are welcoming, safe, and meet the needs of students, staff, and community. And and human talent. Really thinking about our staff has had to do some major shifts in their practices, and so that continuous improvement and growth mindset, and then also ensuring that the working environment itself reflects a positive culture and climate. So I know you all have the pictures, and you know, it's just so exciting to see our littlest infants and toddlers at the Early Childhood Center at Stansberry. It can't help but put a smile on your face to see them back in that setting and engaging in their learning and their growth and development. We've also welcomed back the preschool students. So we started bringing back some small groups on September 14th, and then all of our early childhood students returned October 5th. And as you can see there, they're sitting spaced apart. They're maintaining their distance with their arms, measuring how far apart they are, really learning routines, learning those developmental skills that are so very, very important. Our elementary students, we welcomed back kindergartners and first graders the week of September 28th. We welcomed back second graders then the week of October 5th, and third graders the week of October 12th, and then fourth and fifth graders started this week. And so you can see here some examples of pictures of different routines that schools have as they are welcomed back into the school each day, and different ways to mark how they need to be appropriately spaced with reminders of washing their hands. There's a lot of wash your hands placards and posters around, and really just giving them that direction that they need to get started with the day. Some more examples of learning is happening, and you see students with masks. We're not hearing a lot of reports that wearing a mask all day is a problem or concern. They're able to take breaks to go outside when the air quality is okay. That's been a challenge, but they're certainly engaging in a variety of learning activities, ready to be back in class. And as I shared earlier, they really adapted from the remote learning to the in-person very easily and very quickly came together as a group because of the work that staff and teachers had done in the remote to create that sense of community. And just more pictures here of some of the indoor spaces, some of the outdoor spaces, just to give you and the community a sense of what do those classrooms look like now that everything is spaced forward. Because in elementary, if you've been in elementary classrooms in the last year or previous to, there's a lot of group work and a lot of interactions with students, sitting very closely together, and yet they don't look sterile. They are still very much alive and vibrant with student learning, even with students facing all the same direction. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Some examples of students lining up. Things look different. The cafeteria, when students are there and able to eat lunch in there, it looks different than it does in the past. But students are happy, staff are happy to be back in the buildings with students. Our middle school students, as I said, 8th graders joined this week. They are in that hybrid model where approximately half of the students attend school on Monday and Thursday. The other students then are on Tuesday and Friday, with Wednesday being a remote learning day for all. The students are engaged in those authentic learning experiences. We're using outside spaces wherever and whenever we can, while the weather is still treating us well. And so you can see, a variety of activities, and you even see some of the technology that teachers have in their classrooms to be able to do some things that from a distance, so that students from the back of the room can see towards the front of the room. Our high school students will come back next week. However, over the course of this past 3 weeks, we have been bringing them back in smaller groups. Although the SAT testing was not a small group, but we brought a lot of students in, but they were in small groups giving the assessment. So we will have the PSAT, it may have been today. It was maybe it was last week or it's today. I don't remember. It's within the last 2 weeks. We were doing the PSAT as well. So you get some examples. We brought students in for anatomy. Kind of hard to do some dissections and those kinds of things remotely. I mean, there's certainly good simulations, but they're simulations. So bringing them in when we could. Culinary class was another example. So each school looked at the needs of their students and identified what groups of students they might bring in for a part of a day prior to next week. This week is, basically semester exams because with the 4x4, at the end of the quarter is really the equivalent of the end of a semester. So that's one of the reasons why we did not bring high school kids back in this week like we did with 4, 5, and 8, was to allow them to finish out the equivalent of the quarter and the equivalent of a semester. Our exceptional student services, we've been bringing small groups in since September 1st, so the second day of school, we've been bringing them in. They've been receiving their services either virtually or in person. We purchased a new curriculum that is online, but it also can be used while in person. So we'll be able to very easily toggle back and forth with students who have significant needs with curriculum. Our overall celebrations, students were eager to engage. Teachers were eager and ready to serve their students. I will say, Todd's team, operations, facilities have done some amazing work and leadership in supporting and guiding and responding to our principals, to our teachers about safety concerns and making sure that the buildings were ready when students came back. And so I definitely want to thank them because it's a huge celebration and it's an ongoing kind of thing as things change. And we certainly, greatly respect and commend our educators for their resiliency. They've been incredibly flexible. They've been dedicated to make this work for our kids, and it gives me goosebumps to actually have them back in the building. I will say one of my worst nightmares back in June was that we would start remotely, and actually I think in some ways that's, while it wasn't ideal, it's allowed us to now, if we have to flex out of in-person back to remote, we're ready, and kids are ready, and they were learning, and I said built community while they were even remote. So that's some next steps. I've already said that all of secondary will be up and running next week. And our educators are continuing to use those learning management systems that they had in place for the students, especially at the secondary level, because students are remote 3 days a week, of continuing to use their Google Classrooms and other tools to continue to engage. And even at our elementaries, similarly, also continuing that, as that's kind of a silver lining in this, is that we now have staff who are comfortable and more comfortable in using some of the online tools and can continue to use them in their classrooms and not have it only be used when we're remote. So it's very, I'm just so glad to have our kids back, and certainly any questions about kind of where we are with in-person learning.
Questions? Barb?
And it does my heart good to drive by the schools now and see kids outside, whether it's recess or but they are, even at High Plains, I was watching them the other day coming home, and they're socially distanced in their play. So you see a group of 3 that are socially distanced, but still obviously a group of 3. And it just does my heart good to see them there.
It's good to hear their laughter again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mark?
2 questions. Do we have any idea how long we're looking at the AD hybrid model as opposed to getting? So for example, our elementary students are in 5 days a week. So any idea on middle and high school?
I don't have that. It's going to really depend on how many students we can fit in safely, and that's with the older children, we have to be more cognizant of the distance between them versus elementary. So things are going to have to change pretty radically, I think, from a county perspective of cases for us to move away from hybrid to fully in-person at our secondary schools.
Okay, but looking at the Larimer County Public Health data is a good indicator.
Yes.
For us to see which
It
direction
is,
we're moving.
yes.
Okay. Second question, with the wildfires that we're dealing with, when we heard COVID response, one thing we were hearing is fresh air, fresh air, fresh air. We don't have fresh air outside. And so questions came up, how are we regulating the quality of the air inside of our schools?
Todd? I have no idea.
See, it feels like a Todd question to me.
It's a Todd question. I could make something up, but.
No, thanks, Mark. Since the fire started, we've actually toggling the outdoor air sensors and dampers on and off depending on the air quality. So we're still purging the building at night, but we're watching the thresholds. So if we get to certain thresholds, we'll actually close the dampers, but then as we get air that's better, less particulates in the air, we'll open the dampers back up. So it's really more of a test on the system and the controls, HVAC guys that are working those dampers to make sure we're still getting fresh air when we can, but not also opening them up and putting when the air quality is over the threshold of particulates and dumping that into the building. So it's changed from just monitoring by the day, and setting the building up to actually more almost like an hour by hour monitoring and a toggling of the outside air dampers to bring in or stop the outside fresh air.
That makes a lot of sense. It was very interesting to watch Monday's air quality report because it went from 38 to 176 within an hour. And so, you do have those windows of opportunity to get that fresh air. So it's good to hear that we're watching that on an hourly basis instead of just daily.
Yep, correct.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Stu?
How's the situation at Big T?
So it is consistent with this week. So it's still on mandatory evac. The fire line is holding, but with the winds of today and yesterday and the other fires going on, the support of the different crews have spread out. The good news is the fire line that they were holding, if you follow County Road 43, basically just south of Store Mountain, that line's holding, which is what we need for not only the school, but for the city of Loveland's water detention and quality ponds there. That's really their focus now, is protecting that. That's where the fire line, the actual engines, there's I think 100 different engines from several different departments that are on that, mostly that line, that southern line. So we don't know when we'll go to voluntary evac. It depends on the storm, hopefully this weekend. Assuming we get the snow that they're projecting, hopefully come early next week. Hopefully go all the way off of voluntary and evac, but it's going to depend on how much moisture we get. But right now the school, we checked on it today. The power and gas is on and off, so right now the power is on, but they did disconnect the gas from it just for safety precaution because it's in that mandatory evac.
So the kids are on totally remote then right now, Dawn?
Yes, they're on totally remote this week, and then we'll reassess the end of this week, beginning of next, depending on weather.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? No? Thank you. Next up is, I guess that's still you, Dawn, huh?
I'm here till the end.
Okay, 6.5, we're going to do a couple of policies here. 6.5 is a first reading on policy IKF, graduation requirements.
Yes, so we thought we were done with graduation requirements, and then COVID hit, and so we brought graduation, temporary policy adjustment for the class of 2020. So tonight, we brought that as well as some additional changes that have that do have a connection to COVID. One of them is, well, I'll start with one that's not a connection to COVID. Our legal counsel has recommended that we remove the course credit requirements for the classes of 2016 to 2020 out of our policy and move it to an exhibit, because these students, keeping it in there together is somewhat confusing. Those students are no longer primarily in our school, but we do need to hang on to that because we will have students who will graduate as fifth year, sixth year, or seventh year seniors, and they need to be held to the same requirement that was in place when they were with their graduating class versus having to meet any new and additional requirements that would now be in the policy. So legal counsel has recommended that we move that to an exhibit. We hang on to that for the next 3 years, and then after that, when those students now age out, then we would remove the exhibit entirely. Somewhat related to COVID is the addition of a 24 credit distinction diploma. Currently, the policy has a 24 credit diploma and then a 28 credit distinction diploma. And as what's really come to light with COVID, as well as even prior to, is that we have a number of students who have very high weighted GPAs. They're taking highly rigorous courses, and for a variety of reasons, they're not able to complete 28 credits. Some of those reasons are that they may be taking college classes at Front Range or in Greeley at Ames, and with the way the schedule has been in the past, is that they miss a class because of travel. And so it's awfully hard to get, if you take enough of those, it's hard to get that 28 credits. They can certainly get the 24, but the 28 is a challenge. Some of our students have to work and help support themselves and their families. And then we also have students who transfer to TSD in their sophomore, junior year, and they, again, have had very rigorous academic coursework, but there's just no way they can get 28 credits in the time that they're here by the end of their senior year. Additionally, within this distinction what we would like to, what we propose here to the board is to add that option so that students who have a 24-credit diploma, but they could graduate with distinction by taking a 4th year of mathematics. So that's what's different than the regular 24 is there's 3 years to 4 years of mathematics, which aligns to the higher education admissions recommendations, and that they would, within those 24 credits, need to take at least 3 credits that are weighted. So they need to take some version of IB, AP, concurrent enrollment, college credits, and then have a weighted average GPA of 3.5 or higher. So that's what we're recommending there, and then actually to phase out the 28 credit with next year's freshmen that wouldn't be available to them to the class of 2025. And a reason being is as we really thought about this, the rigor of the content is what makes it rigorous, not taking more courses. And so that's the distinct reason we would adjust that. The other thing that we're recommending is the honorary titles that are currently in the policy and only available to students who get the 28 credit diploma of distinction, is to have those available to students regardless of their diploma. And so we've called those out separately, and that they would be awarded to any student who has a weighted GPA of a 3.7 higher or above. And there's the 3 different categories there, 3 different different thresholds for the different ones, whether they get the 20, the 24, the 24 distinction, the 28 distinction. Doesn't matter. If they've got that weighted GPA, our recommendation is that they get that honorary as well. We've removed the language regarding valedictorian and salutatorian. As we looked at other districts, that's not typically in board policy. It's more of a practice or a procedure. And so we're removing that from the policy and putting it back into student handbooks and that. And then the one that is definitely related to COVID is the class of 2021 is the first year under the new graduation guidelines that are to graduate not only with high school credits, but also to demonstrate competency. Obviously, they missed out some opportunities for demonstrating competency through a variety of assessments from March on, and their senior year is kind of interesting as well. So the State Board of Education at their July meeting voted unanimously to allow districts to provide flexibility in those guidelines for the class of 21. And so we are recommending that not to remove them entirely, because that certainly is one option. Our recommendation is that we will use successful course completion in English language arts and mathematics classes as the demonstration of competency for the class of 2021, and that's what would become a temporary policy. So what we will do to bring this back to you in 2 weeks is it will actually be 2 separate items. One, we would ask you to make the changes to the policy that would be the enduring policy. And then we would have a second action that then would add that flexibility language so that it shows up as the policy, and then we have a temporary policy for 2021. So that it will come back in 2 things. It looks like it's all one right now, but that's what we'll do just so that we keep things very clear of a policy and a temporary. Any questions?
Questions, board? Stu?
Dawn, in looking at the names of the 3 diplomas, the 20 credit diploma is called the general diploma. The 28 and the proposed 24 will be with distinction. And then there's the regular 24, which is just called the Thompson School District Diploma. I'd like to see us see if we can attach a more meaningful name to that diploma, because all the others are Thompson School District diplomas as well. And I think that one deserves a slightly different name.
Okay, we'll see if we can come up with something
Okay.
to bring back to you.
And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and for the information of the board, I shared some thoughts with Dr. Schaefer and Dawn about the Latin honor titles, about cum laude, magna cum laude, and summa cum laude, because I wasn't sure that the board meeting was really the place to talk about it, but yet I wanted to share my opinions, and they both said they would like me to share my thoughts with the rest of you and give you the opportunity to react. First of all, let me state that I am a big supporter of a whole variety of student recognition opportunities. The Latin honor titles are normally college level. I did some looking. It's probably more than a handful, but there aren't very many individual schools or school districts that actually use those Latin honor titles at the high school level. Before I share just a couple of other quick thoughts, I do have a question, Dawn. Could a student who earns a general or what we're now calling the Thompson School District Diploma receive an honors title without taking any weighted classes if the GPA is above 3.7?
If they're weighted GPA, so again, weighted means whether or not they took weighted courses, that's what this policy would intend, yes.
Yes,
That if they got, yeah.
So the answer is yes. Yes. Okay. So just quickly, my thoughts on this. The schools have many academic distinctions already. I asked Dr. Schaefer if he could help me put together a list of the variety of distinctions that are available. Let me just read these for you quickly, and this is just some of them. 4.0 and above, honors, National Honor Society, STEM, top 10%, AP capstone, IB diploma, and national merit. And these are listed in the school graduation programs. The students currently who are going for the 28 credit diploma are already graduating with distinction. We're suggesting that with the addition of the 24, that would also be with distinction. At some point, it seems to me that honors become redundant and that too many different recognitions run together and lose their special nature. I suggested maybe we need to drop some of the others and then just go to these Latin honor titles. But I guess really what I'm thinking right now is I'm wondering about the need for that. It's primarily a college designation, and I think we're watering down a number of our other recognitions by introducing yet something else.
Well, it is part of board policy now for the 28 distinction.
Right,
I mean,
it is
so
for the
it's already in there for at least one group of students.
Yes, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I have no objection to that.
Any other questions or comments, board? I did have one, did you raise a hand, Pam? Okay, I just had one, I think this is a question. So if we're gonna take the valedictorian and the salutatorian designations out of policy and just put it in handbook, how do we need to ensure that it's consistent from school to school?
And that's a great question because it hasn't been
Right,
until now.
and
that's the intent is that building principals, along with the director of secondary education, I mean, they're working on, it's consistent moving from this year forward, and that they would look at that every year and just making sure that they all agree, they all know and understand what it means. And so it becomes part of a practice at the beginning of the year as they're looking at student handbooks and coming together collaboratively to make sure that they are. And then Director of Secondary Education is, when we get to that point, is now reviewing their practices and their processes and make sure that what was agreed to is followed.
So we are aiming to be consistent from school to school and from
Correct.
year to year, not.
Correct.
Okay. That's the only question about taking it out of policy, is that then it's easy to change. I mean, I see why it's not in there, but.
And so along that same line is consistency. So, you know, as we all know, from graduations, every high school has their own, like Loveland High is the only one that does the Latin, I think, designations. And so that's my new.
Thompson Valley does too.
Thompson Valley.
They do the Latin honor titles as well for the 28.
No, they don't. Thompson Valley? They never have. Did
That
they
was
do
on,
it this
that
year?
was on the list. That
Oh,
Mark
okay.
gave me.
They have never done in the past. Maybe
Okay.
they started this year. But, yeah, so that always was curious during sitting at graduations and trying to figure out every high school's. So when you say, I understand we'll try to do valedictorian, salutatorian consistently, so what about are we going to let Loveland High keep doing the Latin?
Well, that's the intent of the policy, would that be all students would be. So it wouldn't be just one school doing the cum laude, magna cum laude, and summa cum laude. And I mean, that rolled into board policy for the class of 2021, because prior to that, it wasn't a requirement for the classes of across the board. At least that's my understanding.
Other questions? Did that answer your question, or? Yes, no? Okay. Anybody else? All right, next one is item 6.6, first reading of policy JICEA and JICEAR, student-related publications.
Yes, this is a policy that it's been a while since we've updated, and it is focus areas is around the inclusive and supportive culture and making sure our learning environments are positive, have a positive culture and alignment. The proposed changes that we have to this policy, this is around student-related, school-related student publications. So our yearbooks, our newspapers, those kinds of things that our schools produce. So we've looked at the language of CASB and eliminated the language that is specific calls out school-related publications being a public forum, as our school-related publications are much broader than the intent of how that is written. Also, making it more clear as to what is prohibited. There's it's all there. It's the same language, it's just all in a sentence. And so for clarity purposes, it makes it easier for students and staff, principals to see. It's a bulleted list of what is prohibited. The regulation more clearly explains the process for approval, distribution, as well as the appeal. We also have the multi-layers of appeal that is more than what was there before. And so it's just making sure that we go through all the chains of command. And really, there's not, the policy itself didn't really change. There's no new restrictions. There's no new guidelines. It's simply updated to provide more clarity about how students, these publications are created, distributed, and how then decisions about any content or distribution, what the appeal process is.
Questions, board? No? All right. Final one is item 6.7, first reading of policy JICEC and JICECR, student distribution of non-curricular materials.
So this one, there was a change in legislation in July, and it updated the rules regarding how and when students can, and what they can distribute that's non-curricular materials. So these are not our yearbooks and our newspapers. These are, I want to hand out a flyer about whatever. And so what we've done here as well is to align with state law, and then we've created a regulation for the policy because there wasn't a regulation. We referenced a regulation, but we never had one. So we've added a regulation that clearly articulates what the process is, primarily for that approval and that appeal for students, and outlines timelines that are expected within those. This policy, some of the big changes, you can see that what's prohibited. Again, it was all in a statement in one bubble or one paragraph, and now we've called that out as bulleted lists. And it's not that they shall be allowed, but they may distribute non-curricular materials. And having that, the regulation definitely. The appeal process is pretty strong in that one. And so we wanted to make sure that we included that as students, if for some reason there was something being distributed out that was maybe inappropriate, what would be the process to go through.
Questions? No? Okay. All right, that takes us, excuse me, to the end of the printed agenda. There are no written reports. Future agenda items and/or requests for information. Reminder, we have a tour of Riverview PK8 at 3:30 out there, and you have a memo in there. Remember to wear closed-toed shoes. Hard hats if you have them. They'll give us hard hats if you don't have them. Vests, long pants, long sleeves, etc., etc. And then our study session will follow in person in the boardroom at 5 p.m. The book, the Doug Eady book.
Yeah, yes, we bring the book. We have two topics on the agenda for our board study session. The first one will be an update on our benchmark assessment, our iReady data. That would be math and literacy, grades 1 through 8. And then we will talk as a board for the second portion just about board working priorities, focus areas, additional future items for study.
Anything else? Nope. Okay. I will call us adjourned and see you guys tomorrow at 3:30. Thanks. Thank you, Berthoud High School, for